Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
You're listening to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based grief and loss podcast for Black women, where you will hear stories of miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, and infertility to learn there is a testimony in tragedy. You will learn how to heal, gain clarity, find hope and peace, and turn your pain into your purpose after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee. October is here, and it is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. Join us all month long as we honor and celebrate our babies who have gone to heaven far too soon. Welcome to episode 117 of the Sisters in Loss podcast. Have you heard of the term male factor fertility? Male factor infertility can be caused due to low sperm production, abnormal sperm function, or blockages that prevent the delivery of sperm. Also, illnesses, injuries, chronic health problems, lifestyle choices, and other factors can lead to male factor infertility. Today's guest shares her recurrent miscarriage story and journey where her husband is experiencing secondary infertility by the way of male factor. Tamika Henderson had miscarriages in 2016, 2017, and 2018, and it became so routine, she knew she was miscarrying. After consulting with a fertility doctor, she found out her fertility was due to male factor, which was shocking because her husband already had 2 children. In this episode, she takes us back on that journey towards healing and her next steps in her fertility treatment journey. This episode is for you to listen to if you've never heard of male factor fertility and how it affects a marriage. Here is Tamika Henderson. So thank you, Tamika, for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So I'd like to begin with you sharing a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay, so to pay the bills, I actually am an administrative assistant, but within me, I'm a painter, I'm an artist, I'm a photographer, writer. I'm all in the arts department. I'm 39, I'll be 40 in December, so a lot of fertility issues. My goal has always been 40. It's okay, as long as I'm pregnant before I turn 40, I'm good. So that's where I am right now.
Take us back on that journey and talk to us about your infertility journey from when you started to try to conceive up until now.
Okay, well, I got married in 1998 when I was 18 years old, and I was married for 15 years, never got pregnant, wasn't really thinking about getting pregnant, but once I got divorced at, 33, then it became evident, like, I'm getting closer to 40. I'm okay as long as I have a child by the time I'm 40, but I've just wasted, well, at that point, I didn't say wasted. I've just come through 15 years and haven't had a child yet. And then I met I didn't meet him. I reunited with my current husband. We were together for maybe a year, and I actually got pregnant for the first time. And so all of my fears that I ever had about having a child stopped then, because I would look at other people. I would actually look at TV shows, and there would be so many problems with pregnancy that I kind of shied away from wanting to have a child. I was like, there's so many problems that you can have having a child. I'm not even interested. But when I actually got pregnant, all those fears just went away, and it was like I was at war for my child. It was only day one of finding out I was pregnant, and I was all for having this child. And then so we did it was in July of 2016. We had our first doctor's appointment. Everything was fine. They said I was about 9 weeks at that time. Had our first OB appointment, and that went well. But by the time we came back for the sonogram or ultrasound. I'm not sure which one. It's all still kind of new to me with that part. They were clicking around, clicking, doing their clicking on the screen, and they're all up in the ovaries and stuff. And they say they don't hear heartbeat. So at that point, this is my first time going through the whole experience. I'm like, okay, you just don't hear it right now. It's okay. Then they started to explain that it may have been a miscarriage. So then my heart sank, of course. And at that point, I went straight into prayer mode. Like, this isn't going to happen. God, you said that I would be fruitful and multiply. You said there would be no miscarriage. So they sent it to another room and they gave me options like they always do. You can either let it pass on its own or you can, I don't know. I don't even know what the other choice was. But I told them I would wait. So I took choice C, which was to wait. And from then on, I just went into prayer mode. I went into war for my child. And whatever I had to do, I was looking up how to prevent miscarriage, all the things that the books say to do, eat your beets and all of that. So I did all of that. And then still maybe a week later, we ended up having a miscarriage. And 6 months later, got pregnant again. Same thing happened. I found out maybe on the weekend, and by the following week, same thing, a miscarriage. And then the next January, got pregnant, found out on a Friday. By that Monday, I was miscarrying again. So it's been, I say then I had one more this year, but by that time, I said, I'm not going to any doctors. I already know what's going on, because we never made it past that first initial period. It was enough for a pregnancy test to say that we were pregnant, but by a couple of days later, I would miscarry. So I knew what was going on. I still carried on about my day, went to a TED Talk. I knew what was going on. I didn't want the pressure or the pain or the grief to really sink in. So I didn't go to the doctors. I didn't experience all that all over again. With the second miscarriage, that's when I reached out to Shady Grove Fertility, and they were able to do testing and found out it wasn't me, actually. It was my husband, who his sperm was low or had low motility. And our options was IVF at that time, and he was kind of reluctant to do it. So it took us until this year to actually come around to doing it, and we were in the process of doing it before I spoke to my pastor. And he prayed over us, and I was maybe in February. And at that point, I was one appointment away from getting the medication for IVF. And so with him praying over us, in my mind, I said, okay, God, so we're not going to have to do IVF at all. Before the next appointment, I'm going to be pregnant. Of course, that didn't happen. So then my thing was, okay, well, then that means that the IVF will be successful. So I go in, get the medication, start birth control for the first time ever in my life to actually have a child. And then maybe on my 8th day of taking the birth control, that's when I found out that the medication for IVF would be about $5,000, and we had to pay it within maybe a week. So at that point, I said, you know what, we're going to fully trust in God and trust him on his word. What the pastor said, that we would have a child by the end of this year, and it will be a boy, and we would name him, well, his middle name will be Michael. And that's what we're leaning on, and that's where I am today.
Wow.
Yeah.
So are you in the DMV, or are you in?
Yeah.
You're in the DMV?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you said Shady Grove, and
yeah.
I've been in contact with Shady Grove about my parent.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So Shady Grove told you got to spend all this money on these medications, and then you all are like, we're gonna trust God through this process.
Yeah.
So really take us back on that journey after the second miscarriage or the third miscarriage that you had.
Mm-hmm.
How did you all grieve that loss and then the previous losses?
Well, the first one, once I got to the point that I could actually talk about it, because at first, after that doctor's appointment, I just went to the lake and I cried. But then I looked at YouTube and I found a video of this couple who also was told that they didn't hear a heartbeat, but they prayed through it and they made it. So I was looking at the victory side. I'm like, this can happen. This can happen for us. It doesn't have to be a loss. But then when it was a loss, It was like, okay, God, it didn't happen this time. It was the first time I've ever gotten pregnant. I just we had to dust out the cobwebs and, I was still hopeful. And then 6 months later, I got pregnant again. I'm like, yeah, God, all right, we're going to do it this time. Thank you, God. And then it happened again. So at that point, I was like, this faith part of my walk is hindering me more. Because at that point, my church and everything we believe in is faith. I go to a church called Spirit of Faith. So that's the whole thing. We're walking in faith. We're speaking what we want. And for me, speaking what I want wasn't working. So I went to Hope. I actually switched churches for a little bit. Going back and forth, but to a church called, what was it? Hope? Something. But Hope was in the name. So for me to have faith was hurting me more than having hope. Hope said it could happen. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. And I was okay with that because that's something that, I didn't have in control. But faith said this is going to happen. But I've already been shown that it may not happen. So it hurt more to have faith than it did to have hope. So within that, God still showed me that He wouldn't let me lose faith. Like I just wanted to let it happen whenever it's going to happen. But deep down inside, I still had faith that God was going to do it eventually, somehow, some way. And then with the third one, I don't even remember where I was mentally with the third one. I think by the third one, I just knew that our bodies needed help. So it wasn't anymore about faith or hope anymore. It was just about the natural. Like I told my husband, we have to do this IVF because I don't want to have another miscarriage. It wasn't no longer on my faith. It wasn't on God anymore. It was about what are you and I going to do to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore.
October is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. Join us for our Healing and Prayer Summit. This summit is taking place online every Tuesday during the month of October. To register, go to ericaandmcafee.com/summit to get the replays of every video. We will be discussing healing after loss. We will also be discussing therapy after loss, trying again, parenthood, self-care, and advocacy after loss. You do not want to miss these videos with these dynamic speakers. Go to ericaandmcafee.com/summit. And every Tuesday, a video will be posted. It's free. Join us at our Healing and Prayer Summit every Tuesday in October.
So then when the fourth one came, actually with the third one, I remember going to the hospital and the nurses, they kept looking and stuff and saying to me that I was possibly having a miscarriage. And I told them I didn't receive that. So even until the last minute, I was still hopeful even with that one. And then I had to go back because they said that they were watching my numbers. So I had to go back to confirm the miscarriage. And even with the same doctor that I saw the last time that I told her I didn't confirm it, that I didn't receive it, she took the pregnancy test and another nurse came in and said, yeah, it's negative, and kept on walking. But then the nurse that I met before, she called the girl back, take a look at it. It's a faint positive. So even I was able to switch her words around just to have some faith in the situation. It still ended up negative, but just the fact that I was able to turn her words around. And then with this last one, I didn't allow grief to enter in at all because at that point I knew that my body needed help. It was no more about God helping me or hurting me. It was more so I just knew that my body needed help. My husband's body needed help, and how we went through it. I was angry at him sometimes because he didn't want to go through IVF and he didn't want to stop smoking. But with the prayer that my pastor prayed, he told me that we would start with the smoking. He never said that to my husband because my husband didn't even know that I told my pastor it was about him. He may know now if he listens to this. I don't know. But my pastor said, first we'll deal with the smoking and then you'll have the baby. That same day that he prayed, my husband stopped smoking. I didn't have to say anything to him. He started vaping, and now he's on 0% vaping. So it's still vaping, but the juice that he puts in it doesn't have any nicotine in it. So I may not have gotten pregnant with the IVF because I didn't go that far with the IVF. And even right now, I don't know whether I'm pregnant or not. We're just trusting God in the whole situation.
Wow. So
One thing that we know with infertility, there are couples all over the world, 1 in 8 couples, 12 million people living with infertility, 7 million of them are women, 5 million of them are men. And male factor infertility in particular is definitely not discussed in our community. So, or, it's frowned upon from men. So how, I know you can't speak for your husband, but how have you all dealt with that as a couple, that the infertility is not necessarily on you with your body as it typically is, but it's on him with his body and his sperm. And, you were saying about him changing some of his habits to help produce quality sperm. So can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's been really stressful, actually, because he already has 2 children, an 11-year-old and an 18-year-old. So for him, in my eyes anyway, it's like he's already got the kids. So for him to have to stop his habit in order for me to have a child, it didn't weigh too heavy on his heart. But for me, it wasn't even like my whole thing was, I don't want to have any more miscarriages. Having a miscarriage hurts. So it wasn't even the pressing thing that I wanted a child. I just didn't want to have any more miscarriages. So for him to do the IVF, he didn't even like producing in a cup. So even with every little thing, even with IVF, I'm like, you're upset about putting your stuff in a cup. You know what I'll have to go through with the rest of IVF, with injections and stuff. So it was always some tension there. And even with him trying to stop smoking previously, he would start and then stop and start and stop, and then he'd lie about it. But for me, it was always that cigarette. When I saw it, it was just like birth control to me. So I would walk around angry because, you're stopping this process and you're not looking at how I'm hurting through this process. So there was a lot of issues between us about that.
Thank you for being honest about that, because I believe that that's the most difficult part about it, is the couple as a whole has to change their lifestyle in order to get to the next step on that trying to conceive journey. And sometimes one person or the other person is a roadblock. So I'm happy that you are working through it. And now you're at the place where you're trusting God on this next step of the journey. So do you think you will eventually do IVF at some point, or right now you all are just trying no birth control, changing your lifestyle, doing that thing?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to do IVF. One, because there was already so much stress in it, because the last time he did have to go to the doctor, he said he wasn't doing it anymore. Because it's the room they have to go into, and it's just uncomfortable. It's not something natural to them. So he did have one more appointment to go to, but he was like, if he had to do it again, he's not going to do it. So we may not have even completed the process the last time had we not ran into the financial part. But it was so much tension with that. So IVF, I don't think that's something we would do now. I mean, just knowing how much the financial burden and then the stress that comes from the both of us trying to do it together. But yeah, we are completely trusting in God now, just not even now, but just completely trusting in his word that was prayed over us, that it's going to happen before the end of this year. And we're just focusing on that part.
Awesome. So what are some things that you're doing? You've kind of talked about some things that your husband's doing as far as some lifestyle changes. What are you doing to prepare your heart and your mind and your womb really to carry a baby?
Yeah, so I've completely stopped eating out as much. Well, I won't say completely, because I did eat out like twice this month, but I used to eat out a lot. So just preparing my mind to cleanse my body, not eating out, not doing the fast food, drinking way more water. Drinking water every day now. I mean, all day now. And my mind, I just wrote a book. It's a journal. So it's a journal. It's a daily journal to connect me with my future child. So not necessarily focusing on when am I going to have a child, when am I going to have it, when it's going to happen, but more so connecting as if she was already here, or as if I know that he or she is already coming. So it's just like a fertility journal that's connecting people who are waiting. It's called While I'm Waiting. So just the journal to connect the now with the future.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's such a great idea for women who are waiting is to write and journal and just think about and write to your future child that's coming.
Yeah.
Because then you can read those letters while the baby is in your womb and while you're carrying. So, I love that idea. That's such a great idea. And it's cathartic too to really get it out, especially because you know that's something that God has promised you and it's the desire of your heart. So what are some tools and some resources that you have used on this trying to conceive journey?
My main tool actually was Instagram. Because I started a fertility Instagram page, and then I found this whole TTC community. Just watching people going through their successes and their failures, it helped me on a daily basis. Like, I'm not the only one. There's thousands, millions of people out there going through the same thing that I'm going through. So that was a major tool for me. Praying, letting people know what I'm going through. I have a friend who had a stillbirth back in the 90s, but she's still open for me to talk to her about what I'm going through. Like early in the morning, I can text her a picture about ovaries or something, and she's still there talking and responding. So just being able to have people that you can talk to and people that you can relate to about it.
Yes, community is everything, and it is so needed. And it's the reason why I started this podcast, because I've met so many amazing women like yourself who just constantly share their stories and are open about their journeys. And it's a sisterhood we don't want to be a part of, but we are in it and we understand each other. And I love it. And I've met so many good friends that, who knew you could make friends in your late 30s? that you are still cool with. It's crazy, but I love it, and I encourage everybody who's listening. If you're not a part of any of the communities that are on Instagram, you definitely join the Sisters in Loss community at sistersinloss.com. So, what encouraging words can you leave the listeners here who are on there trying to conceive and they're in the wait for their baby and their promise from God?
I would say don't give up. Keep waiting as long as it takes. Keep waiting, because I've seen people. I mean, it's so funny how I can see somebody like 5 years ago, they didn't have any children, and now they have 3 or 4 children. Like, they didn't know at that time that they would have 4 children. Like, if they could just be where I am right now, seeing them without and then seeing them with, if we could see ourselves that way, the wait will be worth it. So just keep waiting. Don't give up. It'll happen one way or the other. Because even when I say one way or the other, natural childbirth isn't even the only way to have a baby. I mean, I have my pastor's daughter. She has 2 children of her own, and then she's adopted 2, and she's a foster parent. So there's many ways to make a family. Just don't give up.
Absolutely. I love that advice. So where can we find you on social media to connect with you after this episode?
I'm on Instagram at Our Little Journey. Journey is spelled Jurnie. And I'm on Facebook too, but I don't have the fertility one on there. So just Instagram at Our Little Journey.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tamika, for being on the podcast and sharing your story and your life.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
I appreciate being here, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. For show notes, go to ericaandmcafee.com/podcast. Have you joined the Sisters in Loss online community? If not, join us online at sistersinloss.mn.co. That's where you get all of the tools and the resources and freebies from each of the episodes. I can't wait to talk with you all in the online community. If not, until next time, we will see you next week.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, how to get 30, how to get 20, 20, 20, how to get 20, 20, how to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes per detail.